Hey, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be of such an enormous help for people who are just starting off their IELTS preparation. They maybe don't know what to do exactly, what to start with, what is important, what not to pay attention to, and hopefully today we are going to talk about all of those things, discuss them, and come to a clear conclusion. I have prepared 8 steps for you to make the preparation more intentional, easier, even, more fun, I guess. Because it is fun when you know what you're doing, when you enjoy the process, when you understand why exactly you're doing that and what benefits this will bring in the future. So, step number 1, if you're just starting fresh, if that's, just the idea of IELTS has crossed your mind and you're like, okay, what do I do now? How do I get my hands on that IELTS band score? So the first step is to identify what your purpose is, okay? There are 5 different types of IELTS tests and all of those are taken for different purposes. Maybe you want to migrate for work, maybe it's your dream to go abroad to study. Those are different things, and maybe you have just married someone who lives out in the UK and you also need to move to them, and there is an IELTS test for that as well. So make sure you know why exactly you're taking that test, just because the test will differ and you need to register for the specific one that fits your own purpose. Okay, so the first type is IELTS Academic. This is the test for those test takers who wish to study at undergraduate or postgraduate level outside of their own country, I guess, in English, or for those who want to register as a professional in the UK. The next one is IELTS General Training, and this one is suitable for those who want to migrate to UK to live there, or for those who want to study below degree level. There is also the test called IELTS Life Skills. Now, IELTS Life Skills breaks down to A1, A2 and B1 levels. And some of them, namely A2, cannot be taken anywhere else except for in the UK. Usually, these IELTS Life Skills tests are taken by people who need to prove their proficiency in speaking and in listening because they migrate to the UK as a family and they apply for a family visa, or they are married to someone and they need to reunite with their spouse in the UK. So these tests focus on speaking and listening only, which is more convenient, but of course you need to take them only if you apply for a citizenship or a family visa, or you're moving to reunite with your spouse in the UK. So all of those IELTS tests can be also taken for a UK visa specifically, or just for moving somewhere else other than the UK, for example. So if you apply for a UK visa and that's why you need your IELTS, make sure to read very carefully what is written on the UK Home Office website, because there are many requirements to that test, specifically some target band scores that you need to hit before you're able to apply for the visa. So identifying your purpose helps you to understand what kind of test you need to take and what target band score you need to aim for. Because, for instance, in my case, I was taking IELTS to get into a business school, and my business school set a requirement of not less than 7.5 overall IELTS academic band score. And that was my target band score that I hit and even overachieved a bit, because I ended up having 8.0 overall. Now, step 2. Define your preparation materials. Once you have identified what kind of test you're taking, now it's time to understand what will be the supporting materials that you will use for your preparation. Here, it is very important to be diligent and careful, because, believe me, there are so many fake and, frankly, obnoxious materials that I just don't know who uses them and who has written them. Honestly, the books that you choose must suit your test type and they must be of high quality. You can either buy books online in an e-commerce shop such as Amazon or your local one. You can of course buy them offline in a physical store as well. You can also pop into my Telegram channel, which is at WSE channel, where I share carefully selected books for free, or you can pop into your library. That's what I did, and I was so glad to take some IELTS preparation books just from my library without having to pay for them. That's very convenient. Step number 3, to take a placement test. It is very important to understand where you stand in the beginning. What is your initial level before you start progressing and growing in terms of your English learning. You also take those tests to ensure that you're moving in the right direction. Remember, IELTS is not about strategies and tips that will get you a dream band score for some reason somehow. No, IELTS is about knowing your English language perfectly, regardless if that's your first language or not the first language, which is my case, for example. You need to understand that you are there to showcase how you use your English. So taking a placement test to test your grammar and vocabulary is super important because it helps you to build a learning trajectory on that, to understand what topics you're not familiar with and what grammar needs to be worked on additionally. So you can take a grammar placement test that I linked in the description box down below as usual. There is also a very nice vocabulary placement test that I will also link there, and it helps you to understand what is your range of vocabulary, how many words you know. It is not only helpful to know how many of them you have in your lexis, but also when you're taking that test you will see many new words, unfamiliar ones, and I always advise stopping and taking them down to learn them in the future. So understanding where you stand in terms of both vocabulary and grammar helps you to plan your learning trajectory better and perform on your IELTS test better as well. The fourth thing that is necessary is to take an IELTS mock test. Now, if you have just started thinking about IELTS, if you don't know anything about the test, it is still very important to familiarize yourself with the structure of the test because it is very peculiar. It is completely okay to fail in the first time because you are doing that not to prove that you know something. You are rather doing that to understand what are your weakest modules and strongest modules. So, for instance, when I took my first IELTS mock test in the very beginning, I instantly understood that listening and reading are sections that I'm okay with, and I didn't really allocate much time to those. I rather focused on writing and speaking because I instantly felt that, oh, okay, that is challenging, that is something that I don't really know how to deal with, so I tried to work every single day on those two modules and occasionally jumped into reading and listening. And indeed, in my real test, it was easy to get 9 in both reading and listening for me, but then I struggled a bit more with my writing and speaking. So understand what are the modules that you are comfortable with and modules that you need to work on more so that your preparation is more intentional and effective. You can find many mock tests in the IELTS preparation books. For example, I always advise the IELTS trainer book that is amazing for those who have never worked with the test and those who are pretty much new to IELTS. There are many others that are official and authentic and that you can use to take a test. You can also try to find mock tests online. However, I do not know if they are truly authentic or not, so I do not really recommend any particular ones, but you can always try to Google it. The step number 5 is to create a planner. Now, it is massively important to track your progress as you go, as you proceed with your preparation. If you manage to take a certain band score in the beginning when you took your first mock test, be sure to write it down to your planner so that when you work on your improvement, you see where you started and where you're heading. So adding your target band score to the planner is quite beneficial as well. Make sure to base your whole planner on the time frame that you have at hand before your real IELTS test day, because we all have different timings and it is very important to be realistic as to what is your own pace of learning and how fast you learn, and adapt your planner to this, because trying to set yourself a very unattainable goals like saying, okay, I'm now at the beginner level, but in 2 months I'm going to hit 7.5 on IELTS. Of course, that's not real, and this will probably not help you at all. Being realistic, understanding where you're starting from, what is your initial level that you identify in your placement test, then writing down your initial band score that you had in your mock test, then outlining what modules you have to work on during that time that you have before your test and what target score you want to get. This is how your preparation should be structured, and that is what you can put into your planner. You can create that planner yourself and basically draw it by hand, or you can just get the ones that I made for you for free, guys. Download them from the description box. As always, the link is there. Step number 6 is to understand why exactly you're taking IELTS. It's not just a band score that you are working towards, it is more of your language ability. You see, you're moving somewhere out of your native country. You either want to go abroad to study or to work. Regardless of that, your English language will be the primary means of communication. So you need to have it as perfect as possible. Of course, if you want to showcase yourself as a person who is trustworthy and reliable, because studies show that it is easier to trust and it is easier to connect with a person who speaks a nice language clearly, rather than with someone who struggles with their language, who cannot link two words together, and who have poor pronunciation. Of course, people have different situations and stages in life. Some just do not need to have their English to be perfect. But it is always nice to respect a language of the country where you're going and trying to learn it as good as possible. So think of the future that you're creating for yourself while preparing for IELTS, because English is just the basis of our professional modern world. Everyone speaks it. And I bet you want to show that you are capable of it and perfect as well. Step number 7 is to switch all of your information sources to English. That's something that helped me so much, and I really cannot underestimate it. So when I started preparing, I was still struggling so much with English in general. I could read, of course, I had upper intermediate level, B2, but I was not fluent at all. I couldn't speak like that for hours without stopping and without looking into the dictionary. So I had to do something about that, and I just switched everything I could to English. And that's such a good practice, to immerse yourself into the language that you're learning, so that your results come faster and your preparation goes better. So I had to take the IELTS academic module, and I started googling scientific papers on Google Scholar, which is such an amazing extension of Google where you can find any kind of scientific papers. Then I also switched the language of my phone, of course, and I started reading my daily news only in English. I changed the books that I was reading to English, and I started doing anything I could just in English. I subscribed to a couple of newsletters in English and started listening to some podcasts and watched movies only in English, so did everything I could to stop consuming information in any other language other than English. And that helped me so much, completely transformed how I use the language and gave me the ability to start thinking in English, which makes you so comfortable when you're taking IELTS, because you just think in that language and it's no big deal anymore. And lastly, as a step number 8, find yourself a supportive friend, someone who will be beside you, helping you with your preparation and your journey, uplifting you, helping you with speaking and writing, for example, because it's so much better when there is someone who can give you a task and assess you, track how you go and how you answer this task. So having a friend and having someone who is always on your side and who is always there for you, it's so priceless. I definitely recommend. Even if there is no one who speaks English around you, believe me, on the internet there are so many people who are keen on learning English with you as well. You can also pop into my Telegram chat group, for example, that is at WSE Community, where there are so many people, literally thousands, who are looking for a speaking partner, who want to find a friend for preparation. Use those means of communication to connect with people from all over the world and boost your English as well. And lastly, remember to always strive for better. Never give up on the goal that you've established and keep moving forward to your dream. You will find many videos on my channel where I explain specific tips, tasks and strategies for IELTS that will be also handy for your preparation. I hope that will be useful. Now, thank you so much for being here with me today. I will be very happy if you decide to leave a like for me or even subscribe. And as always, I will be delighted to see you again here. Ciao!